Alright guys, Scrappy again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Championship Sunday in Miami, 4 teams remain in the tournament. There is one heavy favourite, but who knows what is going to happen outside of that. The first Championship Sunday in the history of the CDL, would you believe, that neither OpTic Texas nor Atlanta FaZe are in attendance. What does that mean for those two respective teams? I don't expect FaZe are going to make any changes, but over the last 24 hours or so, there's certainly been some suggestions that OpTic might be thinking about it. Scump with a few words on stream again about potentially going back in, and Dashy responds to some of the discussion online around Mercules and whether he could be an option for their team after this major is over today. Very much enjoyed to your thoughts in the comments. Who's going to win? Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I greatly appreciate it. Let's get into some of the reaction to yesterday. iLLey's team, they continue to make a bit of a run. I think Team Notorious, Afro and those guys absolutely slapped. Afro had like a 1.7 in this series. They took down iLLey's team, but they're still making a loser's run. Currently top 6. Who knows how much further they can get. Before I forget to say it, I'll just say it now, because I think it's also the first ever Championship Sunday where this stat is true. There are 16 players competing today. Over half of them are not from North America, right? So you've got HyDra on the Los Angeles Thieves, that's 1. You've got Nastie and Abuzah on the Vancouver Surge. You've got Insight and CleanX on the Toronto Ultra, that brings up to 5. And it could have been Beans as well, had Beans been into the Mercules. But that's 5 players. And then, of course, we've got the 4 Spanish guys, right? So likely, I don't imagine there's been a Championship Sunday before where the majority of contenders have been European players. But certainly a stat that I wanted to mention anyway. So pretty cool to see, I thought, given that there's no European franchise anymore, right? But there's still plenty of players killing it at the highest level. FaZe frustrated by the loss. It's an interesting stage for FaZe. They never really looked great from start to finish. Often with FaZe, occasionally you'll see one of their modes slip up. But this stage, I mean, it was 2 of them, really. I mean, their Hardpoint and at times their Search and Destroy, neither looked especially good. The series they lost to Surge, the first series of the tournament, is just a series that FaZe typically never lose, because if FaZe win the map 1, they're just usually so good at closing out the series from there, whether that's a 3-0 or a 3-1. They're usually just so good at that. For FaZe to lose 3-1 after winning the opening map is something that very rarely ever happens. And I think that kind of set the tone for them. And against Miami yesterday, yeah, their hardpoint wasn't there. They lost the final search as well. Drazah says, you know, just terrible at hardpoint, pathetic out of me, super frustrating. Also for FaZe, they've not got that long to turn it around in the sense that today is the Championship Sunday. This coming Friday, the matches are back on. I'm pretty sure the qualifiers resume immediately, right? So there isn't much time for these teams to really figure it out and turn it around. And as Simp says, GG's Miami lost last map. Hardpoint not nearly good enough right now. So look, FaZe will get the reps, and it could be a pretty good time for them to lose. I mean, look, their worst times to lose. Last year they came top 6 at champs. So they'll certainly be happy that's not the case. And look, the 4-peat is such an incredibly challenging accomplishment that is frankly only reserved for the very best teams ever in COD history. And I think FaZe still, they're a step behind, in my opinion, the dynasties that we have had, and maybe this weekend was a little bit of evidence towards that. But unbelievable for Heretics, right, for them to make it back to the Sunday again was actually cool to see. They're in Miami. I think, you know, people have said, look, it's busier there in person than it looks on the cameras. And just, you know, the fact that there were some local fans there supporting the team is pretty cool to see, actually. And, you know, there's certainly a lot of support going into today as to whether the home team can actually make the full run in the tournament. As Thieves say, though, GG's Miami. They play Surge, of course, today. They slammed Miami. Thieves have to be coming into Sunday with the utmost confidence. But I think that Thieves have done a good job so far, taking it series by series, you know, not getting too ahead of themselves, and that's what they need to do today, because Surge are a team that typically they've had their number, but that does not mean that it's going to continue, because Surge right now are looking pretty final in their own right. But let's talk about the teams that are already eliminated and where they might go from here, right? Because as I say, crazy stats, for the first time in the history of the league, neither OpTic nor FaZe have made a Sunday. And there is a bit of a caveat here to consider, because if you look back at the World Championship Grand Finals, that's only the finals on a Sunday, that tournament, right? And if you look back through the history, MW19, FaZe were there in the finals, Cold War, they won it in the finals, Vanguard, they lost it in the finals, but the year after that, Modern Warfare 2, that was New York versus Toronto in the finals, right? So FaZe weren't there. So FaZe and OpTic didn't make a Sunday at the Modern Warfare 3 World Championship or Modern Warfare 2 World Championship in 2023. But I think that's like the only caveat here, because since then, FaZe were obviously in the finals. Well, OpTic were in the finals last year. They won it, and that's pretty much the history of FaZe at the World Championship over the last few years, and OpTic as well. But on a regular championship Sunday with 4 teams in attendance, always OpTic or FaZe have been there. It's pretty funny to think about, right, that okay, FaZe have probably carried the vast majority of this stat, certainly recently, but it's still true and crazy to think about, right, that today is going to be a very different day in many respects. Those teams, therefore, have something to think about. Look, are FaZe going to blow it up? No. But if it keeps going like this, if they come top 6 again for the next couple of events, then yeah, sure, absolutely. They'll be considering a change, especially if you've got your boys at Twisted Minds and Alcancia coming in with some serious bread looking to sign some of those players. Maybe even OpTic say, you know what, maybe we keep Shotzzy, we try and build around somebody else. Who knows what their plan will be. But for now, OpTic, of course, FaZe will still be fine. I mean, they won the last 2 events in a row. They won EWC last year. OpTic have to think about how they make it to champs and how they turn around their season from here and what options make the most sense right now. Mercules has been killing it so far this weekend on Toronto. Yes, he's stepping into an incredible system which is perfectly adapted to his play, but also he's done everything asked of him. Competent on both weapons, can play the objective, can get hill time, communicates relatively well. He's been really impressive so far. And as Parasite says, right, this guy was literally heading into the weekend about to play challenges, and 10 hours before he was due to play Miami, they gave him a phone call and said, yeah, you're on the team. Crazy situation, because he's pretty much guaranteed a contract after this weekend. Let's be real, somebody is going to say, all right, we're going to bring you in, whether that's the situation with Toronto and what they might look to do, or whether that is somebody else. And I think OpTic, given the fact that a couple of years ago they brought in Ghosty, and I'm not saying Mercules is quite a Ghosty type player, in terms of his strengths and weaknesses. I think there are some differences there. But OpTic brought in Ghosty, and he salvaged what was looking like a horrific season for them. Yes, in the off-season they dropped Ghosty, they brought in Kenny, and that was the right decision. They went on to win the World Championship. But they still made the call. This year, could we see something similar happen? Because, right now with OpTic, with Skyz not playing so well, with OpTic on the bubble of even making it to the World Championship, and no guarantees they do, even though Rocket helped them out by losing yesterday to Mercules, of all people, it's got to be something to consider, right? So a couple of things to share. Did want to share these clips, though, from Scump, because he has been entertaining the idea, more so than even maybe I expected him to, about whether he could come back in. He mentioned on stream that, look, if I was going to come back, it wouldn't even be for a season, it would just be for a stage, and then it would be hopefully for the World Championship as well. So, look, the thought has clearly gone through his mind. They mentioned it to Karma as well when he came on the show, and Karma kind of said, well, Karma was laughing about it, really, but clearly it's something that's crossed his mind as well. I'm sure that Karma's had the conversation either with Hex or with himself, and has said, damn, if Scump was to come back, maybe that would change the tide of the season so far. Doesn't seem likely to me. I just don't see Scump wanting to do it, or in making that much sense. I think they'd get better with Scump. I genuinely think they'd be better with Scump, but I don't think it would be enough to make as much difference as they're looking for. And of course, you've still got to build for the future as well. That's the primary thing here, right? You've got to think about, all right, what's the best decision to set ourselves up for success in the future? And probably bringing back Scump, he might be an incredible short-term option and short-term fix for the team, but you're not setting yourself up maybe for future years. So if there's a notable talent out there on the market, you've probably got to go and give him a go. But this is what they had to say.
Honestly, Scumpy, what's the chances of a single season return? Dude, it wouldn't even be a single season return. It would be a singular split. It would be a singular split and then hopefully champs.
We were having a blast.
Yo, they want me to spawn in.
No way I was coming last.
Yeah, David, there's an elephant in the room.
They want me to spawn in, bro.
So,
there's your answer, guys.
What the fuck's going on there, David?
There's your answer. He's just laughing at the thought.
Everywhere, bro.
He literally just laughed at the thought, guys. Now I feel like a piece of shit. He just laughed at it.
I'm not entertaining anything.
So Octane tweeted out, Toronto got some thinking to do after this event, given the whole Beans Mercules situation, and Octane said, look, it was kind of a bit tongue-in-cheek, and I think the Toronto guys, whatever happens today, they were convinced that they could, and maybe would, have won this tournament if they had Beans in the team instead. And if they don't win today, I still think they keep Beans. But what they do with Mercules is a very, very good question indeed. They may bring him in. No, I don't think there's any world they bring him in for Insight. Certainly not mid-season. I just think there's a 0.5% chance that happens. Probably lower. Bringing him in for Beans is not impossible if they were to win the event and dominate it today, which is unlikely, but I guess is not entirely impossible. And then you've got to consider where he might go elsewhere, right? Because Dashy was actually in this thread, and TJ was like, you've gone full-blown suit with this comment, and Dashy was talking about that album that they were listening to recently, I think. But Dashy was kind of giving the opinion of like, what are you yapping about, right? Like, what are you talking about? Obviously, they're going to keep Beans kind of being the implication. But Noctin replies and says, look, if I see a fill-in that doesn't look like one, I don't know, man, right? Someone's got to give at some point. And Beans is like, look, calm down, right? Can you step off the timeline for a second? Because people are talking about it. Now, for Beans, okay, I don't think this is going to happen, but let's say Toronto win the tournament today with Mercules and Beans gets benched. OpTic should be on the phone to Beans, right? So, like, I think for Beans, whatever happens here, I'm 95% sure that he's going to stay in the team after this tournament. But look, who knows? And I think whatever happens, it's going to be fine for both of those parties because OpTic should be on the phone. Like, whatever Dashy says in this thread, OpTic should be on the phone thinking about it anyway. And, well, obviously, what happens today is relevant to what these teams may decide to do. Toronto, they will play this situation interestingly. I don't know what the contract looks like over there. I don't know if, exactly what they've signed with Mercules for the weekends, what the contract looks like in terms of what, guarantees he has or what advantage Toronto have in this situation to potentially hold power over him. But Toronto will play a blinder probably, if they can anyway, and either sell him for some bread or keep him around, potentially either on the bench to play the rest of the season on challenges. But there will be interest, right? I think the most likely option is that Toronto will maybe find a way to get some money from him and probably let him walk away to another team. And there will be other teams on the phone after this weekend. Speaking of the kind of European players earlier as well, kind of crazy to think that 11 of the players on the Sunday today will have won their first major championship if they were to win it. Now, that is true for any team who wins, even Thieves, because Ghosty has not won a major championship yet. Today could be the day, frankly, should be the day, needs to be the day that doesn't happen. But everywhere else, there are some incredible storylines. I mean, for Mercules, it would be insane, but for any of these teams winning, I think it would be a spectacular story, and that's what we've got to get into today. So, Toronto, they've not won in a year and quite some bits, 454 days. Thieves as an org haven't won in nearly 2 years. Vancouver Surge, the last time they won was when they were Seattle Surge back in Vanguard with Pred. And Heretics, after finally putting together a roster over the last couple of years that actually is the roster they should have probably had all along, they have made 2 out of 3 championship Sundays this year, and they're looking to maybe go one better than they managed last time around. This is the bracket for the day. The first game of the day, I think, is going to be Ultra versus Heretics to kick off on the loser side. So immediately we're going to have, well, a massive game. I mean, this is a massive game. Not even just in terms of the teams, but the drama between the organizations, right? Like, this is KOI versus Heretics. This is one of the biggest rivalries in esports right now, certainly in the Spanish scene, because Ultra, KOI, that's all kind of part of the same thing. So it got spicy the first time they played. Of course, Toronto are going to look for revenge after that was the first series they played on the Thursday with Mercules. So they'll be thinking that this series they can go one better. Who's going to win? I genuinely do not know. Kind of, gut feel says that Ultra will have enough. I mean, they've just got better and better in the series that they've played so far, and their losers run has been very impressive. But this is going to be more of a test. I think Miami could easily win the series. I don't know, game 5. Who knows, honestly. Like, Thieves should win the entire tournament because they smoked Heretics the other day. Toronto have a sub, and Thieves' head-to-head against Surge is very good for Thieves, right? Like, historically, they've been really good in that matchup. So far this season, that's been true as well. So I think it's going to be a real uphill battle. Look, logic probably suggests it should be a Thieves Surge Grand Finals rematch that Thieves win, but I'm not sure that logic is going to paint the full picture today because it's so tough to call. Miami at times have looked very difficult to stop. I mean, they could catch fire and make the full losers bracket run. Toronto, I mean, they started from losers round 1. You guys remember when Los Angeles Guerrillas, they won Major 2 back in Vanguard from losers round 1, and they had incredible search and destroy. They made the run all the way, but in this tournament for Ultra, it's the hardpoint which is looking incredible. The bottom line is, I think any of these 3 teams could be in the finals, but Thieves, will surely be in the finals and surely have to win the entire thing. And if they don't, there will be serious questions because, you know, I'm not saying these teams are like easy to beat for sure, but the way that these have been looking lately, it's tough to imagine that they find a way to squander it today. But if they do, we'll certainly be talking about it tonight. Very much into your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.